Hello, I'm Tommy Waller, and I'm here today on Facing the Divide with my friends, and I'm excited about this show today. I'm a founder and president of HaYovel, and welcome to the broadcast today.
And I'm Kimberly Troup, and I am a Christian Zionist, and I am the U.S. Director of Christian Friends of Israeli Communities.
And I'm Sondra Oster Baras. I'm the director of the Israel Office of Christian Friends of Israeli Communities. And unlike my two friends who are Christian Zionists, I am an Orthodox Jew. We have a great program today. It's a happy program because we're talking about a happy topic. We're talking about the holiday of Hanukkah, which is right just upon us very soon. And of course, this is a Jewish holiday, and we have a lot of customs and meaning to the holiday. Just to summarize briefly what the holiday is all about, many years ago, about 150 years before the Common Era, something like that, there was Syrian Greeks who occupied Israel and were determined to erase the Jewish faith and forbade the Jews from observing the Sabbath, forbade the Jews from studying the Bible, and took an idol of Zeus and put it in the sacred temple in Jerusalem. And, for some time, the Jews suffered under this yoke, but at one point, Mattathias, a high priest, said, no, had enough. He puts out the rallying call, "Who is for God is with me," and rallies all the faithful to fight against the Syrian Greeks. They were vastly outnumbered, but miraculously they did prevail, and they were able to recapture Jerusalem, to sanctify the temple. And what we celebrate with Hanukkah itself is a word that means dedication. They were able to dedicate the temple. And there's other details involved, of course, but that is what we celebrate today. The victory of our ancestors over the Syrian Greeks, the victory of our faith over those who tried to destroy our faith. But Kim, we were chatting before, and you were telling me that Hanukkah is mentioned in the New Testament. That's interesting to me.
Well, and my question for you really was, or is, how did Jews, clearly this is before the temple is destroyed in 70 AD. So how did the Jews celebrate Hanukkah back in the day, Second Temple era?
Well, that's a good question. All I can tell you is what we know. It's very interesting. The story of Hanukkah, as we know it as Jews, how it was passed down to us in our tradition, is it is mentioned in the Talmud. Okay. The Talmud is written around between the year 400 and 500 of the Common Era. So it's written hundreds of years after the story happened. Right. Okay. So that has been the story we had. Now, there is, some of you may know the book of Maccabees. Mm-hmm. And these are Second Temple era books that were not known to the Jews until the modern era. And so it's very interesting. So there is each of those books have different versions of the story. Of course, they don't just talk about the Hanukkah story. They talk about the whole period. There's different stories that are in there. But what's interesting, of course, the book of Maccabees do talk about the battles and the victories and this kind of thing. It definitely presents it as a religious war, as it was, of the Jews against the Syrian Greeks. But what we do know is more how it was passed down through the generations. We don't have nobody wrote a diary and said this is how
this is what we do. And the reason that I asked the question is because of the scripture. And this is found in John chapter 10, starting verse 22. At that time, the Feast of Dedication took place at Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the colonnade of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly." So if you put that in context with what is Hanukkah, and it's this feast of dedication, it's this whole concept, clearly assuming that the temple is still standing, assuming that, it hasn't been destroyed, where else would Jews go to celebrate Hanukkah would be to Jerusalem, which is what Jesus was doing. And clearly they're coming to him thinking, are you the next Maccabee? Like, tell us, lead us. What's going on here? So it just gives a whole different context that honestly I think most Christians miss or skip or don't even, because it's like one sentence, it's the feast of dedication in the winter. What's that? So
right. So let me tell you a little bit more about what it is. We talk about this battle, this religious battle that went on then all these years ago. But there is part of the story, and this part of the story is actually told in the Talmud, and is the story that I would say lays at the foundation for so much of what we celebrate today. There's no question that the whole story is a miracle. I mean, the very fact that this ragtag bunch of people, all of whom were priests, the Mattathias was a priest and his sons were, Judah Maccabee was his son. So it's him and his sons that are basically leading the battle, but, they're not an army, and, they're not soldiers or nothing, and they're just kind of trying to put this together because they're so dedicated. The fact that they're priests, of course, is significant because they felt so close to the temple. These are the people that were responsible for serving in the temple. And so you could say that the defilement of the temple probably, they felt it more personally than most. But it wasn't just that. I mean, there's stories also about martyrdom that happened at that time, about forcing people to bow down to the pagan idols and people refusing and being killed. So that's also going on at the same time all over the land of Israel. So there's no question there's a miracle there. But in the Talmud, and this, of course, becomes the central story, in the Talmud, there's a story about what happens when they take over the temple again, when they liberate the temple and they go in there and they clean it out and they get rid of the pagan idols and they're trying to come back and resume the temple worship. And, of course, to do that, they have to not just clean everything, but they have to consecrate everything, okay? And they have to light the menorah. The big menorah that's in the temple. And in order to do that, you have to have pure oil, not just pure that somebody didn't dilute it, but it needs to be pure in the sense that it hasn't been used for any pagan uses. Okay, so basically what would happen is when they had this oil, they would be produced probably in the Galilee or in Samaria, because that's where the olive trees are, and they would produce the oil and they would seal it. It would be in some kind of a little jar, and it would be sealed, and it would come to the temple where it had the seal of the high priest, and you knew that oil had been dedicated for the temple, and it was sacred. Nobody had, it wasn't used for anything else before, and whatever. So when they clear out the temple, they find this one, all the other oil has been used, taken, broken, whatever. They find one little teeny jar of oil, and it's enough to only burn one day, okay? And it seems that it would take a week to go and get the oil from the north and bring it back. And they're just trying to decide what to do. Do you light the menorah? You're not supposed to ever let the menorah go out. We know that from the Bible. Aaron and his sons light the menorah. It's always lit. They constantly, keep it going. Adding oil, cleaning out the mess, add the oil, whatever. And so they don't know what to do. And they decide to light it. And I think this is an interesting thing. I think all of us can relate to this in a way. When you really can't do things the way you want to do it, do you try anyway? Mm-hmm. Do you start the process, even though you don't know if you're going to be able to finish the process? So they made this very important decision to light them anyway, even though it was very possible that at the end of the day, after 24 hours, the light would go out and it would be another week before they could relight it. So they did that. And this was a miracle because the light continued, lit the entire week until they could come back with additional oil to keep it light. So is known as the miracle of the jar of oil. And it is that miracle that really forms the basis of the most, well-known custom of Hanukkah, and that is that we light menorahs. We put menorahs in our windows, in our living rooms, and we light the menorahs. And it's interesting, the menorah in the temple had seven
Branches.
Branches, right?
Candelabras.
6, on the sides and 1 in the middle. What we light for Hanukkah has 9, 4 on each side, 8, and then 1 in the middle. And what they did is they essentially modified the menorah for the temple to encompass the 8 days of what was lit. Okay, it was an 8-day process. The first day they had enough oil, an additional 7 days. So that one little jar of oil lasted 8 days. So that's why we have 8 days. And the thing in the middle is like what we use. That is what we use to light, the others from. And that's the central theme of this holiday today. So it's a theme that tells us about the dedication of the temple. It's a theme that tells us about miracles. And one of the most important parts of when we light the menorah, our rabbis have determined that, and this is again a tradition that goes back centuries, that we are responsible not just for lighting the menorah, but using this lighting of the menorah to publicize the miracle. So you are not supposed to light the menorah in some internal room and it's just you're seeing the candles. You're supposed to put it at your window, the window that faces the street. And if you don't have a window facing the street, there are some people, especially in Israel, they have these like boxes, these glass enclosed boxes, and they put their menorah in there and light it and take it out to the street. They put these boxes on the sidewalk, and that is so important for us to, in this way, basically we're saying, look, everybody, God wrought a miracle for the Jewish people, and we continue to believe in his miracles, and we continue to appreciate his miracles even today, so many centuries later.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so many lessons in Hanukkah. Even just saying that, putting your light in the window. There's a Sunday school song in Christianity, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And, how dangerous would that be in Israel? Okay, yeah, it's great. You put a menorah in the window. Everybody's got one. You're in a friendly neighborhood. But what if you're in Iran? Do you put a menorah in your window? What if you're in Nazi Germany? You put a menorah in your window? That's a real step of faith. I think, I always remember there was this one story, and I don't remember who it was, but they were either traveling through Germany or anyway, they were on a train and they were there and it was Hanukkah, and they said, do we light it or do we not? This is really dangerous. Will God protect us? And they said at the end of the day, they said, it's more important. And if we die, we die, basically. If this is the end, this is the end. So they got their candles out and they're lighting them. Well, all the power went out on the train. And the Nazi soldiers come by and they're like, hey, you guys are great. You guys are prepared. You guys have candles. Who would have thought to bring candles on a train? And God totally protected them and totally kept them safe in the midst of what could be a dangerous situation. And I think just the lesson from that of how do we take what God's told us to do, even if it doesn't look convenient, if it doesn't look safe, and if we do it and we choose to obey him and we choose to honor him, how often will he use that for his glory through us? The other part of the story that I think really speaks to me personally, and you kind of touched on it, Sondra, and maybe you can go a little deeper into it, is that they had a choice of, do we put a little bit of oil into the thing and light it for a little bit each day for 8 days, and when it goes out, it goes out? Or do we put it all in, and when it goes out, and we just wait? And I think there was some debate back and forth of which way was right, which way was proper, how do we do this? And at the end of the day, they said, you know what? We put it all in. When it goes out, and then we'll get the new oil and we'll rededicate it and
Right.
restart it and move on, right? And that's where the miracle happened. And I think, again, for me personally, just that going all in, not trying to make it work in our own strength and our own ability and our own knowledge of our what we know, but just saying, okay, God, here's what we've got. Here it is. Pour it in, and see what he does with it. I mean, I can't help but think when we're talking about oil, about the widow that went to Elisha, I believe. Elijah.
Elisha.
And she said, he said, well, what do you have? She came to him, my sons are going to be sold. We're destitute. And he said, what do you have in your house? And she said, I have oil. And he said, go get it. Go get your vessels and start pouring. And so she poured and poured and poured and poured. And when she ran out of vessels, and he told her, don't get just a few. If you think about that whole story, if she would have just went to 2 neighbors and gotten 2 extra pots, she'd have still been destitute. Right. But clearly she listened to the prophet, and she got lots and lots of vessels and kept pouring and kept filling and kept pouring and kept filling. So I don't know. That's my correlation.
I love that. I think that's a great connection.
Yeah, but I think too that's the connection. I mean, it seems like Israel's history, right? I mean, you always, you got into the water before the sea,
right.
It spread. You stepped into the water.
Into it before the water part.
You stepped into Jordan, and you really got what the tradition is that it was up to his nose, right? Nakshon, or the
right.
So it seems like that's where God, when he's going to make a way, that's just the way you do it. That's the way the Jewish people have done it in history. And for me, I think the whole story is a real inspiration to me personally, to know that Jerusalem, God is not giving up on Jerusalem. There's going to be a battle for Jerusalem. And I think Hanukkah and the identity of the Jewish people is so wrapped up in this one city, right? And not just the city, but the temple in the city. The temple of God, the place where God says that his name dwells. And to me, the amazing story of how the Jewish people would not give up, not turn, they could have said, you know what, there's pigs being slaughtered in the temple now, there's idols being put up, and they're worshiping idols in the temple. Obviously this place is desecrated. And you know what? All the Maccabees got together and they said, let's just go somewhere else. Let's go to another place, and let's just build a temple in another place. But that was not even an option. Not an option. And I think a lot of times for Christianity, who have maybe believed, or maybe still don't even know that they believe in a replacement theology. God, the God of our Bibles, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he's not changed, he didn't change his mind over the course of 3,000 or 4,000 years. He is always got Jerusalem in his sight. It says his eyes never leave that place. And so I think as Christians, for us, this battle that took place 150 years before our faith was even established, could we actually say that it could have been that the Jewish religion was wiped off, but the Christianity would not exist as well? And so what is our purpose? I think it brings us together. I think that's what we're here to do. The house of prayer, that in our Bible, Jesus even quotes Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, and says, this house is going to be a house of prayer for all nations. And we have to get that. A lot of Christians don't even realize it, that Jerusalem is not done yet. That it's going to be this place where we all come together and we all worship God in one place again. And this is going to be a glorious thing. So for me, when I tell this story to my children, it's an incredible, inspiring story, and actually motivates us to keep doing the work that we're doing here in the land of Israel, to support the Jewish people, to support their place here in the land, to really just to say to the world, you know what? We're not laying down. The Jews are not laying down. And now we have the Gentile world, the nation, now standing with Jerusalem, standing with with the Jewish people, and their fight to establish it for this this great redemption that we're I think we're inching closer to, and certainly closer than we've ever been before. So this is an exciting time for me, and I think that also too, the one thing that Hanukkah, and I'd love to get Sondra's thought on this, is that one of the things that this Syrian regime was doing is that they wanted to come in and force the Jewish people to do something different. They wanted them to lose their identity. They wanted them to stop worshiping the God of Abraham. They wanted them to stop worshiping at this temple. And how many Christians today are in the world that would want to come into Israel and want to take that identity away from the Jewish people, get them to eat pork, get them to celebrate the Christian holiday, get them to do things that are not been given to them. God says to the Jewish people, these are signs, the Shabbat and so many things are signs between me and you. And I think that for us as Christians, we have to stand with the Maccabees. We have to stand with the Jews and say, this is their destiny. It has a lot to do with our destiny. If Jerusalem is going to be a praise in all the earth, then let's stand with the Jewish people, because if it weren't for these warriors, if it weren't for the Jewish people fighting for their identity in the midst of horrible, we can almost say that we're living, there's still people alive that even witnessed something much worse than what the Maccabees went through. Mm-hmm. But yet they saw, this whole story of Israel's existence is almost like it's another Maccabee story, where the fight was, looked devastating, and then all of a sudden we had this glorious thing that happened. And so to me, this is where we come together. This is where Christians have to unite with the Jewish people. We have to really realize that the Jewish identity and Jerusalem's identity and Israel's identity with all of that is so critical to our own faith and our own identity as well. And I'm excited to be able to walk with people like Sondra and Kim and what you guys are doing, and what this whole thing together, together, I would say that our organizations are really making a difference. We're making a difference. We're making people see that the land is good, and that, that we don't have to move everything to Tulsa. Hallelujah. It's not there. It's not there. We can actually, we're going to worship together. We're going to worship together in Jerusalem, and if we have to fight for it, we fight for it, in whatever way, politically, we have to make sure our politicians, whatever way we have to make sure that they're standing with what God stands with. And I think it's important for all of us.
Well, it's very interesting what you're saying, Tommy. One of the things that there's a lot of discussion in our tradition about the difference between Hanukkah and Purim. Now, both of these holidays are post-biblical holidays. Unlike all the other holidays that are the feasts of the Lord mentioned in the Bible, these are two holidays that were added later. And it was added by the people. There wasn't a commandment from God, okay, now you should celebrate Hanukkah, now you should celebrate Purim. Both of these. Now, Purim itself is written in the Bible, but it is a very late book, okay, in the Bible. And it's clear, even from the book of Esther, that there's no prophecy in the book of Esther. God is not mentioned even once. And it's clear that it's the Jews themselves who determine this holiday. Hanukkah is not even written in the Bible, okay? So, and of course it's later. So they compare both of these holidays, and there's no question Hanukkah is let's say, the more elaborate of the two. It's an 8-day holiday. We sing songs of praise every single day during that holiday, and of course the lighting of the candles and everything. And Purim is 1 day, and I'm not saying it's not a great holiday. It's a great holiday, Purim, but Hanukkah is more involved. in a number of ways. And so the question is, like, why? Why? They were both miracles, both situations that happened where the Jewish people were endangered and God came to their rescue. So why is one more serious, let's say, or more seriously celebrated than the other? And there's a number of answers, but one of the answers, actually there's two answers that I think are very relevant. One is that Purim takes place outside of Israel. Hanukkah is taking place in Israel. And therefore, this whole idea of the threat to the Jewish people when they're in Israel is a much more significant sort of threat, okay? But the other answer, which I think is probably more significant and resonates to us if we look back along Jewish history, we have had over time two kinds of enemies, two kinds of threats. There are those whose goal is to change our faith. And if we change our faith, we're fine. Okay? Right. And we see that throughout our history. There were plenty of Jews, unfortunately, not that many, but there were Jews throughout history. If they converted, they were left alone and they were fine. Okay? And that's really the situation with Hanukkah. Hanukkah, the threat was not to the lives of the Jews. It was the only Jews that were threatened were those who remained committed to their faith. The Jews who became pagans, and there were Jews who decided, yeah, we like this Greek stuff. Why do we have to be different? Let's go to them, And by the way, you won't meet any Jew today that is a descendant of those Syrian Greek Jews. Right. Because they're gone, They disappeared. Once you leave your faith and you go and become just like the Syrian Greeks, you're no longer staying Jewish either. It's like, you're gone. And so changing our faith, like you're saying, Tommy, is also part of our identity. But anyway, that was what Hanukkah was all about. On the other hand, you have the Purim kind of threat, which is the person who says, I want to destroy all the Jews. I want to kill them all. I don't care what they think. I don't care what they look like. We just want to get rid of them all. And that's a Hitler. Yeah. Okay? That's a Hitler. Hitler murdered Jews who had converted to Christianity. Hitler murdered Jews who were atheists. And it didn't matter to him. Okay? And so very often you would have a tendency to think, the physical threat is by far the more serious. That's the one we should, the miracle for the salvation from that threat is bigger. And of course, in many ways it is. But I think there's a certain value judgment going on here. And it's a message to us from Hanukkah. Okay? The threat to our faith may well be the more fundamental threat.
Right.
And therefore, it is the threat that we need to fight back against most seriously. It's perhaps the fight that is easier to win because it means that we just have to be who we are and not be willing to give in. And of course, it's the fight that we see the miracle. God helped us in that fight, and there was an amazing miracle. So, but I think that's, and one of the other messages of Hanukkah is the fact that it was the few, very few, ended up defeating the mighty army. But I think that's also part of the spiritual message here. What gave the few the power to defeat the mighty army? It was God's help, but it was also there, and I would say fundamentally, those few who remained loyal to their faith and refused to give in. That already gives such power, such strength, that it's, and I think that's a message we can all take with us, whether you're Jewish or Christian, stick to your faith and don't let other people, try to change you or and frankly, I think as Jews and as Christians today, our biggest threat is coming from no faith, is coming from atheism. It's coming from people, and this is a huge influence today on our young people, on our families all over the world. And this holiday, I think, gives us inspiration to say, stick to your faith. You hold on to it. Don't decide you want to be like everybody else. Because if you're just like everybody else, you're going to disappear.
Right.
Stick to what you believe in.
Right. Yeah, the culture is is waging war, especially on our young people. Our young people are drifting into and being influenced by such terrible things right now. There's a faith out there for us. There's a biblical faith that we can walk in. The key for us is that we stand with what God stands for. We stand with what God stands with. We stand with what God loves, what he says. God doesn't change his mind. He doesn't say, oops, dadgummit, I picked the wrong people. I picked the wrong place. I picked the wrong people. That's not the God that we serve. If you're serving that God, get back to the God that loves Israel and can't take his eyes off it. He loves this place. He wants to make it known in all the earth. And this is the place that gives me credibility for my own faith, because I know that love for Israel and the Jewish people is where God's at. And that's where I want to be. That's the place where I think that we as believers in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, this is the place we have to stand. And this is where we're going to see the miracle again. Because I think as the culture goes into these really kind of weird places, that there's going to be some other miracles that we're going to have to see along the way. And I'm excited to be able to see that. I'm excited for my children and my grandchildren to be able to see that. And,
I think it's interesting. One of the things that God says to Joshua, we see this theme over and over and over in the Old Testament, is remember.
Yes.
Take it to your children. Remember, because it's easy to forget the miracle if you don't recite it, if you don't, rehash it, if you don't remind yourself God saved us. I mean, I love what's the Jewish saying about the holidays, Sondra? They hated us. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. So maybe share with us, Sondra, some of your traditions and, how is Hanukkah celebrated today? We know what it's, celebrating, what it's remembering, but how do you pass that on to your children, and how do you tell even the littlest ones the story of Hanukkah in a way that they can absorb and take in and pass on to their children?
Well, it's a great holiday, especially for kids. It's 8 days, and kids are off of school. Parents are working, but but no, it's a really great holiday. First of all, the center of the holiday is the lighting of the candles, and you light the candles when it gets dark. You're supposed to try to light it as early as possible. Now we're in the winter, so it gets dark very early. We can already light the candles around 5:15, whatever. So people very often come home from work early so that they can light the candles early. And then very often supper will be a Hanukkah party, or, whatever. So it's not like one main big meal like you will have it like in the biblical feast, but there's a lot of food involved always. There are two foods that are particularly, that we eat. One coming from European Jewry, one coming from the Eastern Jewry, and they both have the same theme. As I mentioned, this big miracle that was talked about and emphasized throughout the centuries was the miracle of the small jar of oil. And so the custom has become to eat a lot of fried foods. The more it's fried in oil, the better. Now, of course, this miracle, this custom was developed way before anybody had heard the word cholesterol. And when you go into Hanukkah, if you really want to celebrate it correctly, you've got to pretend that word doesn't exist. Okay, you're going to just eat fried foods for a week, and it's fine. Nothing will happen. After Hanukkah, you can go back on your diet. So European Jews would make a potato pancake. Great potatoes, mix it with eggs and seasoning and whatever, onions or whatever, and fry them. And this is an unbelievably delicious dish called in Yiddish latkes. And people eat them with applesauce, people eat them with sour cream, whatever. It's delicious. Now, why potatoes? Because in Eastern Europe and Russia, that's what you had, lots of potatoes. So, they took whatever they had and they chopped it up and fried it, and you get this great dish. And so that's very, very widely eaten. And in Europe and the United States today, that's probably the main dish. When we got to Israel and we met our brothers and sisters who had come from the Middle East, we discovered they had a completely different custom, and that is to make donuts. Because donuts are also fried, but they don't have potatoes there. They had a lot of flour. Okay, so they made these donuts, and there's actually several different types of donuts that are made. The most common one in Israel is a jelly donut. It's like a regular jelly donut. You know, you make the donut, you inject the jelly inside, the powdered sugar on top, and that's good. And when we moved to Israel, that was the only kind of donut they had. It was just jelly donuts. And then in recent years, I mean, donuts have really taken off in this country.
They're gourmet these days.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And towers of chocolate on top and sprinkles and everything you can imagine. And so it's really become this feast of donuts.
Sondra, could you, after, when we put this goes out, could you put some low carb recipes, Hanukkah recipes in the
that doesn't happen. Between the potatoes and the flour, there's all carbs.
I'm just desperate.
Don't forget the oil.
The problem is that the problem is we're going into Thanksgiving, and then now Hanukkah's right after Thanksgiving. We're already going to be eating a lot, so this is going to be a real diet issue for a lot of us.
Well, that's fine. You can take 10 days off from your diet. Nothing will happen.
Okay.
Don't tell your doctor I said that, but it's okay. Now, another thing is, what's interesting in Hanukkah, of course, we light the candles, and there's this game that was developed, I think somewhere in Europe is the source of it, but I'm not sure. They have this little top, with a stick on top, and you twirl it around, and it's a 4-sided top, and each side had an initial, and the initials stand for a great miracle happened. Now the question is where. So if you're outside of Israel, the initials would stand for a great miracle happened there. But if you're in Israel, which is where we are, the initials, they changed the last initial, so it refers to a great miracle happened here. Okay, so even in this game, it's a very Israel-oriented thing, and you play with the top, and depending on what letter it landed on, you have to put in 2 pennies, or you take out 2 pennies, or you get the whole pot, and it's just this fun game. And so the custom developed is you would give money to the kids. I don't mean real money. I mean, a couple pennies to each kid. And then they would use that money to play this game with the top. And the top is called, in Yiddish, it's called dreidel. And in Hebrew, it's called a sivivon. So that is also part of the tradition. So, of course, things changed over the years. And first of all, very popular on Hanukkah, all over the world, is they make these chocolates that are like chocolate coins. Have you seen that kind of thing? Chocolates in the shape of a coin. They're covered with like gold or silver paper. So foil, right. So those are so popular on Hanukkah, because instead of giving the kids money, you give them these little sacks of these chocolate coins, and then
that they can play the game with.
Reminds us of this. Then you play the game, but it's also this thing of giving money. Now, what's interesting is that when I got to Israel, I discovered that this idea of giving presents on Hanukkah just nobody did it unless you came from the States. And I started thinking about it and checking it out. Well, it turns out the original custom was to give money to the kids, which then became chocolate money to the kids, right, to play the game. But we've already bought some of these. Here's one. See?
There we go.
We bought them for our grandkids. There we go. You see, here's the sack of the little the coins. You see, we got silver and we got gold. Anyway, these are ready for our grandchildren.
Those are also healthy, right?
No, very milk chocolate, the best. But what happened is when the Jews came to America with this custom of celebrating Hanukkah, giving the kids some money, they met Christmas, okay? And so on Christmas, everybody's buying presents. And what happened is in the United States, the custom became not just to give money, but to buy the kids presents for Hanukkah, which really was not part of the Hanukkah deal, but it kind of went from money to presents, influenced by this Christmas season where everybody's buying presents for everybody. So I think it's just an interesting, connection there.
And do you think that that's strictly like a North America, a United States custom? Like, what about Jews in Australia or Jews in Europe or whatever? Do they give presents or?
That could be. I don't know. I never checked it out. I know that Israelis don't know about presents.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So Israelis, I would assume, I don't know. I think certainly people that came like from Eastern Europe, Jews who grew up, let's say in Eastern Europe or in Europe before the Holocaust, Jews hid from Christmas.
Right.
This was not a good place for Jews in these Christian countries, and Christmas became a place of bad for the Jews. So I don't think anybody was adopting anybody's, Christian customs. But if we're talking about a more modern Europe, Western Europe, if we're talking about Australia and Canada, it's very possible. Don't forget, we're talking about TV,
Right.
Everybody watches TV. You watch all those wonderful movies that they show you before Christmas, and it's so nice. And everybody gets presents. This is how the influence happens. It's not a religious influence. It's the cultural influence from this season, the season of giving gifts and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's kind of funny because I know in the United States, very often people talk about, oh, yeah, it's that season. It's Hanukkah, it's Christmas, and it's all the same. And, everybody gives presents. And it really isn't the same. It has some interaction. It's cute, the interaction, but they're not the same holidays. And, Christmas is such a huge holiday for Christians. And Hanukkah is a great holiday, but it's not the center of the year in the same way as Passover is, or, Jewish New Year, whatever. Anyway. That's just.
Yeah, I think Christians. I think Christmas has actually taken over. That a lot of people that don't believe in God at all, keep Christmas. So it's just a family event, almost like Thanksgiving. I don't know. Maybe the religious part of Christmas actually has kind of disappeared over. For a lot of people, I think over the years, become more commercialized, and that's kind of a sad thing. And I know Kim's got her Christmas tree there. Sondra, aren't you? There's something you like. Hey, that would be great in my house.
No, I don't want anybody's Christmas tree. I'm really happy with my customs, but I have to tell you that until I started working with Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, I had never been in a house with a Christmas tree, and so. I remember, I don't know, and usually I don't come to the States at this time of year because between Thanksgiving and then the Christmas season, everyone's so busy with their holidays. It's not a time for me to travel. But I remember one year I was visiting somebody in Texas, a very dear friend in Texas, and I was visiting her right before Thanksgiving, but she put her tree up early, like you did, Kim. And I came into her house and I said, a Christmas tree, it's so pretty, and I was so excited, to actually be there up close, and see one. I thought it was so neat, because until then I'd only seen it in the movies. But anyway, whatever. I don't know. Do you see movies with Hanukkah candles in them? Have we hit the movies yet or not yet?
I don't know. Maybe somebody can leave a comment.
I think that there actually are some Hallmark Channel Hanukkah movies. I think it's definitely coming much more mainstream, or the inclusivity of our culture these days is trying to reach out to that and to realize that, hey, not everybody celebrates Christmas. What about these other holidays? How do we bring that into culture and into Hollywood? I know there's definitely some books and stuff, kids' books that I've read to my kids about Hanukkah.
Great story.
I was just in Walmart, and my little Walmart, and out here middle of nowhere, Colorado, has a whole display of Hanukkah sweaters for sale. I have no idea who they think is going to buy them. But we do have a kosher section in our grocery store, so apparently there's a few Jewish people out here, even in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, it really was funny though when I saw the Hanukkah sweaters for sale. I said, okay.
Now I tell you, it is a great holiday, and I have to say that there's no question the kids have a great time. They get their chocolates, they get their presents, they get their, they light the candles. We do a lot of singing. It's a lot of fun. And the families get together. Families have Hanukkah parties. Synagogues have Hanukkah parties. Very often, you're so scheduled on Hanukkah. It's a busy time. It's great. It's a lot of fun. But if you just think about it for a second, the fact that the kids, even from a young age, when they're playing the game with that top, and they know what the initials mean. What do they mean? It means a miracle, a great miracle happened here. What better way to as you're having fun, to make sure your children get, even at the youngest age, some element of what we are celebrating. You know, a great miracle happened here. And you know, and the songs talk about miracles. Every single song that the kids are singing for Hanukkah talk about miracles. And I don't know, I think it's great. You know, for kids, miracles might be equivalent to magic, right? But you know, it is. You think about it. Wow, you know, magic. You know, but of course they know this is magic that God does. And God's the ultimate magician, of course. And so I just think that it's a great way to have fun, but at the same time, you're really educating your children from a very young age that God brings miracles. God does miracles.
God is the God of miracles.
What better message than that?
Can't have a better one. Well, thanks so much for sharing with us, Sondra. I know, you know, most people probably have some understanding of Hanukkah, but hopefully this will, you know, if you have other questions that we didn't answer or burning desires, just call us, email us, and we'll try to answer it, specifically related to Hanukkah. So just thank you for sharing with us and sharing your traditions and your holidays, because it's fun to learn about other cultures and other people.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a happy and joyous holiday.
That's right. Happy Hanukkah.
Don't eat too much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now that you're back, Tommy, you want to come out and we'll have some donuts?
Oh, yeah. Give me some of those keto-friendly donuts. You know, that would be great.
Keto friendly.
That's keto friendly.
I hope you enjoyed that video. And we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below, as well as on the notification bell. And that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you and have a wonderful day.